Hey, Bright Lights, welcome to Architecting. Today, I am so excited to have as my guest my friend and colleague, Jill Bergman. Hey, Jill.
Hey, how are you, Angela? It's so good to be here.
Absolutely. I am fantastic. And I know we have known each other as healthcare architects for many, many years, but every time I meet you, I hear a new great story about what's going on in your life or some past hijinks that you've been up to. So I would love it if you could share some of that story with the audience today.
Yeah, thank you. I find being a storyteller is at heart a lot of what I end up doing, even from project worlds to how I engage in all kinds of things. So I just really love telling stories. So maybe I'll start with a little story of kind of my career walk and what got me to here today. I realize many architects land in that they decided to be an architect very young or they stumbled into it late. I landed in the camp of deciding very young, at the age of like 13 or 14 to be an architect. And coming right out of undergraduate school, I knew I wanted to go back and study healthcare architecture and went to Clemson's healthcare architecture program and have fallen into healthcare architecture right from graduate school and just love that as a building typology and have not veered from that. And now looking back on a 30 plus year career of designing healthcare spaces, just still love it every day. But along that way, my career has been really interesting in that one of the hallmarks of my career that it took me a while, about halfway through, I started looking back. I was not always working a 40-hour work week. I had a lot of times where I was either taking large gaps in my work time or taking breaks or working part-time or working 30 hours a week. And I never saw anybody else like that in my career. I felt like it was one of the paths that I figured I needed to make, and it was for who I am. I don't know if I lean into that as a woman or as a parent or just as a person or as an architect, but it was something that I really needed for me were these breaks every few years or different time periods where I wasn't working on Fridays. And they were really hard to negotiate not seeing a model out there. And it is something I like to talk about because I feel like other women, other people in the industry need to hear opportunities of how they too might still have a very enjoyable career, but maybe they need different ways that they find breaks across their career.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really big one because a lot of us are looking at the traditional template for success, and it's about working hard, paying your dues, putting your time in. And you were a little irreverent about some of that, yet you still got to the point of being an ACHA fellow, an AIA fellow, a partner in a big international firm. So, how did you do it?
There was some comfort in knowing if it wasn't the right place for me, I felt comfortable in saying, if this firm wasn't comfortable with me taking a 3 month or 6 month leave of absence, maybe it wasn't the right place for me to stay, or maybe that was the right point to take a career change in a new job. And I didn't have the money, and I don't know where that comfort came from, but I knew that it was what I needed for my own mental health and mental sanity, as well as physical health, as well as just life perspective. Were these time breaks, a 1 or 2 week vacation wasn't cutting it. I also knew that when I was on the job, I was very intensely working. It wasn't this whole time period. I do feel like when I'm on, and those breaks were just something I needed every 3, 4, 5 years, seeing these breaks. And it wasn't something that I did with purpose early in my career. About 2015, I was asked to speak at AIA Women's, it wasn't AIA Women's Leadership, some just Equity by Design early conferences. And I graphed this career of what had my career been by hours. I decided to dive into the data and did this really deep dive Excel BI dashboard matrix that I don't recommend everybody do, but I was looking at how much did I sleep or lunch or hours or work. And it was there that I was able to see this pattern of, wow, I guess I really do take some breaks every 3 to 4 years. And I could see, I was like, wow, those cost me money or time or changes. I said, I ought to look ahead and start planning for those, because it was very easy to see. I would come back refreshed. I would come back renewed. I would come back with an intensity. And, and I just saw that that was what made me me, what made me energetic for the work that I wanted to do were these periodic breaks.
Yeah, I love that idea because when we take the time to be well rested and healthy, not frazzled and burned out, we can do more better in less time. And I think your career is definitely a testament to that because you have definitely been an outspoken advocate for a lot of issues in healthcare, but also for how success can really be something that an individual determines for themselves. So, what do you think is different about a women's career path versus a man's career path? A lot of our old role models were trying to outperform the men, but you've taken a different tack with that.
Yeah, and it's so easy to hold up your peers, whether they be of the same gender or different gender as you, and see where you are, where they are. There were definitely periods in my career where I saw others making principal earlier than me, or doing other components that I thought, boy, I should have been there. And I had a really great supervisor who said, you're on your path, you're not on their path. And your path is rising and going up, and it's going in the direction you want it to go. And so you have to trust in that. And that was really great advice for me to hear at a tough time where I was doing too much comparison. And at that point, it was like, no, it was a good time to look inward and say, I am doing the work I want to do. I'm going in the direction I want to go. I'm still in the profession. I'm not leaving it. And all those things were very joyful to kind of reflect and lean into. And I think that's something I do like to share a lot is that, it's we fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to others, but you can only do your path, and your path is yours. And so find the joy in where you're going and the arc that you're on.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And it's something that I think a lot of us wish we would have done sooner in our careers and sometimes had to learn the hard way. But as we're doing this, as we're trying to balance a lot of different things in life, one thing I see a lot of people do is postpone licensure or even decide that I don't need to do this. And I know we've had some really good conversations about this, and I was hoping you could share your Jill Bergman wisdom on this topic.
Yes, the Jill Bergman wisdom is do it fast, do it right away, get it as early as possible. Don't delay on this one. If you're going to be in any profession that has a licensure in any path, be it a lawyer, a doctor, any kind of professional engineer, professional interior design, architecture, that licensure is an important mark. And whether your firm values it or not, you should value that level of who you are as a professional. And the architecture exam in particular, it's really designed for somebody with 3 to 5 years of working knowledge. And so, waiting longer isn't going to get you to a better point in the exam process than 2 or 3 years right out of school. I can say all day long why it's important, why it's a part of your profession, but I think specifically for women, but anyone, is I do believe you get paid more over the course of your career the sooner you get licensed. Most firms offer some incremental bump when you get licensed, whether they're reimbursing you for the exams, helping you with the study guides, or are giving you a new title and a pay. That's that promotion that is the compounded interest on that across your entire career. If you do it late in life, you've missed out on that compound interest. So get licensed as soon as possible. I also think that the architecture exams feed into each other. You get into this mindset, and if you're like, I'm going to take one every 3 to 6 months, it's like you're interrupting your mind flow, and you're much better off saying, I'm going to have a really tough 6 months, not going to do any big plans. I'm going to be in this mindset. I'm going to take all of the exams, get it done with, and then I'm going to take a 3 month pause. Which ones do I need to retake? I fell under the in between. It had just finished up the pencil paper and moving into the computer exams. And I decided, and I was very poor at the time, I had very little money. I signed up for all 9 exams every Friday for 9 weeks in a row, and I got it on my credit card, and I got my credit card statement said, I am not failing because I can't afford these but once. And I just ripped the Band-Aid off and had a very difficult 9 weeks, but plowed through them. And so my recommendation is soon as you can do it, that should be the very first thing you get on your credentialing.
Yeah, it really is so important. Statistics actually showed that when we went to the computer, which meant you could take any exam at any time, licensing rates plummeted
Yes.
because life gets in the way. Back when it was on paper, it was once a year, it was a now or never. All of your peers were taking the test at the same time. I was also an in-betweener. I was just finishing up graduate school at the University of Arizona. And in Arizona, if you had a professional degree, you could take the first 5 tests. So all of us were cramming for this 2 days worth of testing, but it got it over with. It's a lot harder when you can do it on your own pace because every excuse will be the reason that you cancel or postpone or just fail to schedule. And then, yeah, there is no later here. It's hurting your career not to take that step.
And I think um, anybody at any point, you get into life into your 30s and 40s, and the complexities of being able to carve that time out is difficult. And it just, life gets complex, whether it's families of your own, families you're attached to, the work or the density of the projects you're involved in. All of those things make make it harder. It's not impossible. People do it all the time. I just think the best time to do it is within that 5 years right out of school. There's other statistics that say, and this leans into that gender, that the very first separation of where men start to succeed more and women don't advance is that very first promotion. Men get it faster, and oftentimes they are getting licensed faster. And so, it's one of those things that I think to keep up with your careers, to give your career that best first start, and to find that right curve trajectory, and seriously get paid more, get licensed early.
Yeah, absolutely. So you heard it from Jill Bergman herself, everyone. If you're still on the fence or in progress, make this your priority. It does matter. And I love what you say about the compounding interest because it's true. This is a benefit that does pay back over time. And the longer you take, the less of a benefit that you get. So let's pivot a little to this idea of leadership. And, a lot of times in school, we don't learn how to be leaders. We learn how to design buildings. And when we get out into the workplace, the people running the firms that we work for are not necessarily good leaders. And there can be a lot of toxic experiences that we encounter, a lot of bullying in the workplace, a lot of what I call systemic codependency in our whole
Mm.
AEC industry. So, how can we be better advocates for our clients, but also for our well-being and do a better job of nurturing that next generation?
Yeah, wow, what a great subject. And um, having older teens at home, I'm really pleased that the discussion of mental health seems to be a new common discussion. It doesn't seem to be something that's hidden. And the what do you need to be a whole healthy person? And I also find that with some of our teammates here in the office, that's a lovely new discussion point, is not just a pencil focused right on the tip of the project work, but on the whole aspect of the project, the whole aspect of the team, the whole aspect of the health of who we are. And I find that delightfully refreshing. I think when it comes to work environments and the self and showing up authentically is, do you feel okay being yourself at work? And do you feel like that's the right environment? I also believe that, on a counter to that is sometimes when we show up, if you might be the quiet introvert, but you have to lead a meeting, you might have to put that mask on and be a loudspeaker and be, present yourself in ways that might be different in order to be that strength of a leader. And so I find a little both end on that conversation of not only showing up authentically, but then showing up and growing into the role of who you are as that leader and that architect. One of the points when I do a lot of mentoring is I see, the first half of your career is really solidly those skills. It's how does a building go together? How does Revit work? How do we put a detailed set of drawings together? What are specifications and how do you flip through a code book? All of those really technical aspects of what does it take to do the work? I think the second half of one's career, and that's where that strength and I'll say in that first half, there are many, many, many people who that's their entire career, and that is a very worthy career to have strong technical career. I think if your goal is an aspirational leadership above and beyond that, the skills that really take you further are those soft skills. It's how do you know it's people skills, it's leadership, it's talking, it's facilitating, it's being able to share your idea, hear somebody else's idea, synthesize what's going on. It's taking what's on paper, sharing it verbally, sharing it graphically. It's not just doing the heads down work. And I think those people who you see, why are they rising ahead? I think those people have figured out how to do some of those soft skills real early in their career. And I think that is what helps launch a leader. And so I tell anybody who really does feel they have principal aspirations, they have leadership aspirations. I think one, build your foundation. Do you know technically how do buildings go together? How do drawings go together? How does CA work? Do you know how to file an RFI? Do you know everything about where the spec and code sections are? And then what are you doing to build on those soft skills to really take that to the next level of having great communication skills?
And some of that can be the ability to sell somebody on a big idea or to hold space for an idea because it's not always easy as a project unfolds, as budget challenges come in, or skeptics on the owner side might challenge the visionary contact you might have been working with. So those things are really important. And I know you are a great storyteller. You've lived a lot of great stories, but you can also really bring people along and have a great sense of humor as you do it. And that is something that I've read articles about. Being accessible is important as a leader, and having that humor, that vulnerability is important. But a lot of times it feels super scary to admit any vulnerability or weakness or make a joke at your own expense because now maybe you are putting some targets on your back that make you more vulnerable. So, how have you balanced that?
Boy, I grew up in a household of humor, and it was dinner tables where who could make my dad laugh so hard he'd cry. And if anybody who knows me out there, I was not always the winner. My brothers were really great at that. Um, and so I learned from the best, starting at a young age with humor, about how that creates a sense of joy. As I reflect on it as a career, I inhale books. I audiobook, I read books, I read on all kinds of subjects and topics. And two books really jump out at me of books I'd love to share with your audience. One is Donald Miller's Your Story Brand, and the other is Jennifer Aker and Naomi Bagdonis's Humor Seriously. So Your Story Brand and Humor Seriously. Oh, it might be Build a Story Brand. I'll have to look at that. Both really good books. The first book on Story Brand, it talks about using storytelling as an analogy for how you communicate something. And one of the best stories in it was that when you're sharing something, you don't want your clients or your other teammates to use a ton of brain energy to get where you are. The more brain energy they have to spend, the more likely they're just going to phase out. They're going to flip to their telephone. Our attention spans fade fast. But if you're using some kind of a parallel story, like I wanted to say something that was very Goldilocks-ish, I said, it's not too small, it's not too big, and I pause. Everybody's brain filled in, it's just right. And so, how do you use parallel stories or analogies to share your point? I think if you think about telling something, how do you do it in a way that others aren't consuming big pieces of their brain in order to catch up with you? Share in context, bring them along on the story. I also think telling something that's a real enjoyable story aspect is something that finds a way to engage with others. You find parallels. The book Humor Seriously, I picked up because I do use humor a lot, and I was actually afraid, was I using it wrong? Was I using it offensively? Was I landing on the tactfulness of it? And I thought that book really did a nice job of how do you balance humor in the workplace um, without feeling being offensive, staying within the boundaries of what's a comfortable business conversation, and yet still using it because, boy, life is hard. We need a little humor, and we need to be sure that if we're going to do this kind of work every day, it shouldn't be a slog fest. It should be the passion and the joy of what we do. Um, I'm also deep diving right now into bullet journaling, and one of the things that that book dives into is that happiness isn't the goal, happiness is the outcome. And I love that. It's like talking about like do that passionate work and then that outcome is happiness. And so for me, one of the joys of passion is connecting with people and telling stories. And I just, I love chatting and I love connecting, but I love hearing other stories too. And I do feel like it's not that you're apologizing for what you're doing, but that self-deprecating humor pokes fun at you. It makes you a little more vulnerable, and then it opens up that conversation. I think it's okay to be vulnerable at the workplace. It makes you a real human being.
Yeah, and that can be important because a lot of times we feel like we have to be the polished perfection and newscaster. Yet I think we see even in society, nobody's watching the talking heads on the news anymore. They're watching the TikToker who's just informally telling the story. And it's because it feels more real. Maybe it isn't, but it feels more real. And that's what people are looking for, that authenticity.
I'm not going home every day saying, children, gather around about this person who really bumbled when they were talking today. You people fear this. What are they going to say about me? What are they going to think about me? But I think you need to self-talk yourself off that ledge and say, you know what, they're thinking about themselves and their own grocery list. So just be you and just be
Yeah.
comfortable with that. And if you mess up, say, wait a minute, I think I need to back this one up a little bit. I think being you is way more important than trying to be a perfect TikTok video.
And I think it's important also to have the distinction between being you, being funny, being able to poke fun at yourself, and being an apologist, because there's also the people that are so worried about how they're going to be perceived that they are never really receiving a compliment or praise. They're backing away. And I think it's important sometimes, if somebody says, I love the dress you're wearing, to be like, yeah, isn't it cool? Instead of, oh, yeah, I got it on sale, or you did a great job in that meeting. And then instead of just saying, thank you, or boy, yeah, there was a tough moment, but at the spur of the moment, thought of a great way to move past it. You're going, yeah, but they really put a lot of pressure on me and I'm not sure they bought it. We tend to apologize for ourselves, and there's a difference, right, between being funny and being approachable and putting yourself down.
Oh, most definitely. And, humor isn't applied everywhere. And certainly there are situations where that's not appropriate. And being the cut up in the class clown is something that isn't going to be needed at every meeting and shouldn't be at every meeting. So, finding the right place and time for it is an important professional skill. One of the things that I was just speaking at the AI Women's Leadership Summit this year with a great partner of mine, Jen Dornbos, and we were talking on being a good facilitator, running great meetings. We feel like not everybody is going to give a TED talk. Not everybody is going to go out there and lead 100-person meetings, but certainly across your architecture career, you're going to lead a meeting. And leading better meetings is a really valuable skill, I think, for anybody. We brought in some of the tools of improv comedy, which I've taken a couple of improv comedy classes. Again, really fun. But the great tools of improv is how to find flow, how to keep things going. And the core tenet of improv comedy is yes and. Yes, you agree with the person, and you add something to keep it going. When you were talking about the idea of somebody denying a compliment, you said yes, but. But is a blocking term. When you do that, you've immediately stopped the flow of conversation between you and another person. And I think the value you might be getting out of somebody sharing something with you is to listen. Listening is such an amazing, amazing skill. I think I can't stress enough that that's probably one of the most important skills you can ever develop as a design professional. And you have to develop the skill in reflective listening and really hearing, not listening just to get your point across. So if somebody says something, you're like, but, you've now stopped their flow of conversation to get your idea out there. And rather than doing that, if you use this yes and or other tools that you bring the flow forward, even when you're disagree, yes, I hear what you're saying. And can you tell me more about why that isn't working for you? Yes, and what else do you want to say about how this meeting was great and awesome or other teammates? So it's not a deflection, it's a flow. And so you can accept those compliments, or you can accept that great meeting, or you can accept where maybe somebody's disagreeing with you, and you can kind of push that flow forward to keep things going. And I think it's so important to not use blocking words in any kind of conversation. I'm sorry, or but, or just, or actually are really bad blocking terms. And I think working on listening skills and communication to keep things flowing really, really enhance great connection.
Now, it is not about you. And that is, I think, the thing that most people get hung up on is it's scary to be in the spotlight in any capacity, whether you're speaking or leading or working on something. And the minute that spotlight's on you, we make it all about ourselves. But if we make it more about the thing we care about, the thing we're passionate about, the issue, I think it's a lot easier to do some of the things you're saying here and not view it as resistance can be something we're curious about, not the sign that somebody thinks we have failed or the clue that we should not keep going.
Yes, completely agree with you on that. Um, yeah, I was trying to think about other ways in which I've been kind of keeping the flow of conversations going recently, and the reflective listening. And another book I was reading on called Super Communicators is saying that when a person is speaking, they're actually not able to truly be receptive in what the audience is doing and if the audience is hearing them. And so if you're having a one-on-one or a couple of people or a conversation, you're not always able to judge whether or not they heard the message you sent. And so if you're on the receiving end of that and you just launch right into your opinions, that person doesn't know if they were heard. And so those reflective communication skills of, what I heard you saying is it's really important to reflect that back. Now you've put their words back on the table and they can say, yeah, yeah, that is what I said, or no, that's not what I said. And so, if you look up reflective listening is a really great tool also as part of the toolkit of what makes somebody a strong leader and a strong designer. hearing what our clients have to say, putting it back out there. Is that really what you said? Is that really how important this is? You know, design is one piece of a big picture that makes place and space. And it takes big teams and it takes all kinds of people. And I think, you know, every single person can find their place and their skills on that big jungle gym of what makes a team.
Yeah, and it's really a lot about psychological safety because when you can do a lot of these different things that you're talking about, you are helping people feel safer. And when they feel safer, now you're building trust. And trust is really the foundation of any kind of relationship you want to have, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, or a business relationship.
Most definitely. And that's a great little litmus test for you to have. You know, do I trust my team to make great decisions? Do I trust that this is going to go in the right direction? And Angela, I think trust is one of those skills that becomes that when you're in that hinge point of your career from doing the work to leading others, you know, you fall into the habit of, I know I can do it faster. I don't trust them to do it right. And that becomes, I mean, trust becomes right in there. And that's a tough skill because you have to learn how to delegate. You have to learn how to trust that they're in the learning process. They're going to do it. It might take them a few times. You have to trust you have the skills to lean into helping teach others and let others help move the project forward so you can rise up and do other things. That's a really, that hinge point in that career from doing to leading really has a lot of trust points in it.
It does because no one will do it the way you do it, but they might do it better. So you have to really open the door for that. And if they don't learn, then the burden is always all on you.
Yeah. Then you're doing two jobs. You're doing their
Exactly.
job and you're trying to rise up. Yeah, the best way to rise up is to teach others to do what you're doing now.
And I think you can still preserve the work you really love. I think people often fear about leadership is it becomes a little more administrative. And I don't think it has to. So, in my career, I worked at a firm that made me a project manager. And I quickly discovered I didn't ever want to be a project manager because I was writing contracts, I was doing the billing every month, I was doing all these things that made me way more acquainted with the Microsoft Office suite of products than being an architect. And I went, this is not the kind of leadership I want. On the other hand, though, what I have tried to cultivate is work as a medical planner where there's still a lot of design and there's a lot of research, but understanding that because I'm drawing doesn't mean I do all the drawing. Because I'm doing research doesn't mean I have to do all the research. That I can really give people whole sections of a project and let them learn and grow and explore.
And as a medical planner, you're really connecting in with clients and that client facing. Most people who go on a medical planning, health planning track really thrive in that client facing position. I too, did medical planning for about 20 years, and the hinge point for me to shift and I was looking, you know, did I want to go technical? Did I want to go project management? Did I want to go office management? And I really switched into the business development side and health principal out there leading, winning, doing work was because I really love those connections to clients. And I found there to be such a joy and a value in connecting and hearing and understanding a client or a health system's purpose and how can we align opportunity of creating place and space that's in alignment with those purposes.
Yeah, so I talk a lot on this show about defining success on your terms. And everything that you've been talking about is just such a perfect illustration of that, that being a partner in a firm doesn't mean office management or project management. There's all these different ways it can look. The way you interact with your team can look a lot of different ways. how much you choose to work and the jobs you take on are all choices that you have. And the underpinning of it all is doing what you love. Because when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. And that's when you are really giving back the most as well.
Yeah, though I'll also say, the rule of thirds comes into play, and I do love sharing the rule of thirds, and that is for anybody in any kind of, high achieving, striving profession, be you a professional athlete, professional architect, or out there doing things. The rule of thirds is, about a third of the time it's hard, but you kind of know where you're going. And about a third of the time, this is too hard, this is too impossible. You're really just completely lost and you don't even know who to turn to. And about a third of the time, you're like, burn it down, I'm walking away. And in that last third, don't get your hair cut and don't change your job. But you need to lean into the reflection of almost everybody is kind of feeling somewhere in there, and you're not always in that. I love my job every day. It's not always, a great place to come every day. It's not always every project and every client is just, roses and lilacs and a walk in the park. It's hard work. It really is. I also think that, just like you think about your career on this much longer. You can't look at it as a daily, hourly thing. It's a long trajectory on the way up. I think the same and way more for women than men is that level of confidence in yourself. It spikes and it spikes really awesome and high in some things and it dips way low in other things. And you look at anybody out there and you're like, oh, they're so much more confident in me. And what you didn't know is like, 3 minutes ago, they were just having a big confidence spike down. So I think really rest assured that you're not going to feel perfect and happy and confident in every single endeavor and in every single project and in every single firm. And, it's not like, oh, if I just change a job, it's going to be better. If I just change this, it's going to be better. I think you have to kind of take this wide breadth view and say, yeah, I'm in the burn it down and go open a cupcake shop this week. So I'm just not going to make any big decisions. We're heads down, getting my to-do list done. And hopefully next week we'll just feel a little bit better about that. Going to put my gratitude, um, just make sure I'm tracking myself and my gratuity journal and, gratitudes and all the things I want to track. Um, uh, so important as to my mental health of just getting those checks and balances because your perception of how other people are, your perception of it's always going to be perfect. It just isn't.
And it's not always perfect, but that's how we grow. If all we did was what was fun, it would get boring.
Yeah. Yeah, it's why I read so much. I love learning new things. I love inhaling books. Every single project, I learn something new. Every single project, I think I know something and I'm totally surprised by new processes, new equipments, new ways of working, new things that are important to different clients. And I think if you look for the new and you look for the delight, you find great opportunities. And if you just switch on that learning mindset.
Absolutely. And then wanted to wrap up with just a little touch on giving back. So I know mentorship has been a really, really important part of how you view your role as an architect. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about why that matters so much and then the different ways you are working with people, the programs you've founded, all of that good stuff.
Yes, mentoring is a big part of how I think about the career and giving back. When I was still in graduate school, I received a fellowship scholarship under the American Hospital Association, the Arthur Tuttle Award for my graduate research work. And it gave me a few mentors as I was doing my graduate work. And one of my mentors said to me, if you're a part of your profession, you'll always have a job. But if you only have your job, you've only got a job. And it was a very profound statement. And she said, going to conferences or connecting into committees or joining things touches that wider professional view rather than just the one view of the firm that you're working with. And I think I always, I really took that to heart and I joined committees and I was always willing to give my time and my hours after work or during lunch hours for professional development. Joined committees, I joined local AIAs, I joined national AIAs, and it put me in touch with a, a big wide array of people. It brought a lot of mentors in my life, and it really taught me how to outreach outside of the world I'm working with to get that reflection. And in doing so, I ended up joining a couple of committees in which we were leading, then giving out scholarships and mentorships and scholarships to come to conferences. And as I rose, it really put me in a position to rise from being the person who was mentored to mentoring. And I really could see this full circle giving back, both giving in hours and connecting out into this community. And it has built me such an amazing network. Most recently, I mentor within my organization at HDR. We have a great mentoring program under our employee network groups, and I have a couple of individuals I reach out with. We have check-ins. We have a couple of really great programs for Career Boost. Um, I also am very deeply involved in the Academy of Architecture for Health, and 4 years ago, we started a program called C2C, Colleague to Colleague. It's an online mentoring program for those focused in healthcare architecture, and was really grateful to be brought on as a mentor early on to that program. And then in the past 4 years, I've risen to now I lead the program. And it's a 1 year program. It runs from March to December every year. We accept a new class of individuals. We have senior mentors and junior mentees and create pods of really great discussions around healthcare architecture and career building. And I just feel like, you know, there's whether somebody's a role model or somebody's really a mentor or whether you have an advocate or a sponsor who's speaking about you. I think building that network is so valuable. It's not just you and your supervisor, it's how many different people around you, whether they're peers that are teaching you or people, they don't have to be more senior than you to be a mentor, to be anywhere across your career. But I just think it's really, really valuable to build a network. And then that network, you're going to find mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a really important lesson for everybody to learn because I always say I'm too busy is code for that's not my priority. So I encourage people, just like you have, to be so generous with your time because you don't always realize the impact that you have. And just like you said, Jill, you can have an impact as an entry level professional. So don't be afraid to raise your hand, to get involved, to get engaged, because often the leadership opportunities will happen in professional organizations long before they may happen at your firm. And the building of your network is something that will also, just like getting licensed, pay dividends for your entire career.
Yes. Yeah. Chase those skills. Don't chase titles. Titles will happen. Promotions will happen. Lean into learning all those great skills. Build a great network. Those are the things that I think really differentiate you. And yes, get licensed early.
Well, thank you so much for joining the show today and sharing all of the great insights that you have accumulated as you've gone through your very successful career and definitely had success on your terms.
Thank you so much, Angela. I'm going to write this one down in my gratitude journal today. Really appreciate your friendship across the years that we've both built our career in healthcare architecture.
Yeah, it has been great. And I think it speaks to the value of networking because we ran across each other at a healthcare design conference. And I think at the time you were on one of those breaks that you like to take every few years.
Yes, and we've never worked together in the same firm. We've never worked on a project, and yet you're an important part of my network. And I think that's something great that maybe your audience should think about leaning into.
Same, same. Yeah, when you're generous with your time, when you build your network, you've always got people that you can reach out to for advice, for collaboration, for help in a lot of different ways. And you know they got your back because you've had their back. So I think that is a great way to end this show. And again, thanks so much for being my guest. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully at the next healthcare conference that comes around.
Sounds great. Thank you.